Deep in the heart of Moscow, explosions have ripped right through Putin's backyard. June 18th was the day that chaos erupted for the second time in Russia's capital. Yet another refinery burns, and this time it's the refinery that is closest to the heart of the Russian seat of power. What we've just seen is the biggest explosion to rock Moscow yet, as Ukraine sends a message that it can strike anywhere it wants in Russia at any time. But this wasn't just about setting oil ablaze. This was about revenge, as Ukraine makes Russia pay for devastating strikes that have killed civilians. What Ukraine just pulled off was no ordinary strike. The target was the Moscow Oil Refinery. Far from being on the outskirts of the Moscow Oblast, this refinery sits just 15 kilometers away from the heart of Russian power, the Kremlin. You could hop in a car and drive to this refinery from the Kremlin in about 30 minutes. A drone could make that journey much quicker. And that's a message that Ukraine wants to drill into Putin's head. This single refinery, which is owned by Gazprom Neft, is critical to Moscow's survival. It supplies 70% of the gasoline used in Moscow and the surrounding region, and it's responsible for generating 40% of the product sold in the region's wider fuel market. At 12 million tons of oil processing capacity, the Moscow Oil Refinery is one of the largest in all of Russia, and Ukraine hit it twice. The first strike, as impressive as it was, ended up being a warning shot. On June 16th, Ukraine's drones flew into the center of the plant, taking out a primary oil refining unit. If that were all that Ukraine had done, it would be impressive enough. As the New Voice of Ukraine points out, the Moscow Oil Refinery is surrounded by literally hundreds of air defense systems, most in place to protect Moscow and paranoid Putin, but many installed at the refinery itself to prevent just such an attack from happening. Those defenses failed. June 16th saw Ukraine's drones bypass at least 5 Pantsir air defense systems mounted on towers, the outlet reported, and when they struck, they hit hard. Russia should have figured out that it had a problem. Maybe it did, but Ukraine gave the Moscow Oil Refinery and its air defenses absolutely no time to breathe. As repair crews processed the damage and attempted to bring some of the shattered primary oil processing unit back online, Ukraine struck again. 48 hours later, on June 18th, more of Ukraine's drones flew straight into the capital city, right past the Moscow Oil Refinery's air defenses, and crashed down onto their targets in a devastating kamikaze assault. Only this time it wasn't a single processing unit that was on the docket. The entire refinery is burning after what Ukraine's drones just did to it. In the space of 2 days, Ukraine made an absolute mockery of the idea that Moscow's most important oil refinery is one of the most secure sites in the entire region. At 4:40 a.m. local time, the first reports of a second wave of Ukrainian drones started making the rounds on Telegram. By 5:14 a.m., those drones weren't in the skies anymore. They were hitting targets as reports started filtering in of explosions at the refinery. Fuel tanks were on fire. One of the world's most secure sites had been struck for the second time in as many days, and as central Russia burned, the videos started to appear. The Excelenova Plus Telegram channel, as it so often is, was among the first to publish footage. In a June 18th Telegram report published at 5:48 a.m., it shared an image of what appears to be a fuel storage unit up in flames. An accompanying video, seemingly shot from the window of a residential building, shows the scale of the massive fire pumping smoke into the Moscow sky. Putin, so long the man who has positioned himself as the grand protector of Russia, became a subject of mockery for Excelenova Plus. A helpless grandfather will knock on an expensive bunker table, crying and shouting about revenge, but there is nothing new, because the Tsar is naked, the channel declared, before adding, the consequences of Putin's war on video, the myth of unreachable Moscow, has finally been broken. Those words will sting Russia's aging leader as he hides in a bunker as far away from the Kremlin as possible. But what will hurt even more is that stream of additional footage that has emerged from Moscow's most important oil refinery. Just 10 minutes after its initial report, Excelenova Plus published another video. We see a tower burning and a much larger smoke cloud than before, as the Moscow refinery is engulfed in multiple fires. Ukraine's FP-1 drones had hit more than once. The channel revealed that there were at least 5 fires at the Moscow Oil Refinery just over an hour after Ukraine's drones were first seen in the skies. This is a catastrophe for Putin. Ukraine has just made a mockery of every defensive measure that Russia's leader has built into his most valuable city. But of course, Russia is trying to pretend as though those defenses did their jobs. The usual excuses are already being trotted out, as are the claims that Russia's air defenses did their jobs. Moscow's mayor, Sergei Sobyanin, jumped straight into damage control mode. He claimed that Moscow's air defenses had shot down more than 180 Ukrainian drones, which is a comment that is far more revealing than Sobyanin realizes. Whether the shooting down aspect is true or not, 180 drones represents the largest single-day tally of Ukrainian drones flying over Moscow. The previous record was set on May 17th with 120 drones. Ukraine just blew right past that, as it sent a warning to Putin that drone strikes against Russia's capital are only going to get bigger and more damaging from here. And of course, the old drone debris excuse was trotted out. Sobyanin at least appears not to have attempted to use that excuse for the Moscow Oil Refinery, only saying that some of Ukraine's drones reached the facility in a short telegram post that he likely hopes will go under the radar. It won't. 5 massive fires burning within a few kilometers of the Kremlin are going to catch the attention of everybody. Beyond that, Russia's mayor claimed that debris from Ukraine's drones hit the Sadovod shopping center, which is a major electronics hub for the city. No casualties were reported, and that's the point. It was Moscow's oil on Ukraine's agenda. Or should we say, Russian oil in general. As devastating as Ukraine's attacks on the heart of Moscow's oil were, you already know what we're about to say. Ukraine wasn't done there. As the Moscow Oil Refinery burned, more of Ukraine's drones were flying into the Rostov Oblast. Regional Governor Yuri Sliazar claimed that a swarm of 60 descended on the region, and that they had caused 2 fires at commercial facilities. As is so often the case, it was left to more independent outlets to report the reality. This time it was the Astra Telegram channel, and the images and videos that it published on June 18th show a massive fire at what the channel says is an oil terminal in Rostov. Based on video footage published by the Supernova Plus monitoring channel, an Astra OSINT analyst determined that the fire occurred at an oil depot on Karl Marx Street. The footage was filmed from Kostyushkina Street, Astra reports, and though we don't have much information about the capacity of this particular depot, the burning oil sends the precise message that Ukraine wants it to send. No matter where Russia keeps the economic lifeblood of its invasion, Ukraine can find it and hit it with drones. Russia might try to claim debris and air defense success, but what we saw on June 18th was absolute chaos, caused by FP-1 drones that not only reached Moscow but zeroed in perfectly on their targets and sparked fires that will take days for Russia to put out. The refinery that keeps Moscow's gas stations filled is on fire. The Kremlin must have thought it was the end times, as drones struck just 15 kilometers away. And if the smoke filling the skies and the flames erupting after each explosion weren't enough to terrify the people of Moscow, the fact that their leader was not around to prevent any of it will be even more worrying. Where was Putin on the night of Ukraine's most brutal attack on Moscow yet? Around 700 kilometers east of his seat of power in Kazan, where he was meeting with leaders of the Association of Southeast Nations in a desperate attempt to drum up business and build economic ties that Putin needs to keep his war going. All the while, Moscow's most important refinery was burning. All of Moscow's airports were being closed down, with passengers at the Sheremetyevo airport being evacuated and in some cases pulled directly from planes that were gearing up to take off as Ukraine's drones flew. Machine gunners were stationing themselves on walls and towers in Red Square in a desperate attempt to stop Ukraine's drones. Muscovites panicked. They're not used to these types of attacks, and certainly not at the scale that Ukraine managed on June 18th. The Guardian says that Moscow is so confident that nothing like what just happened can actually happen that it doesn't even trigger air raid sirens when Ukraine's drones appear. Air defenses are supposed to destroy those drones before Muscovites see them. But on June 16th and 18th, the fragility of this supposed mass of defenses was exposed for everybody in Russia's capital to see. They now have to accept that Ukraine attacking Moscow is their new normal. But for Ukraine, this was about more than proving that its FP-1 drones can strike at the heart of Moscow. Just a day before the drones flew, Russia had attacked. Ukraine wanted revenge, and the burning of the Moscow Oil Refinery is how it took that revenge. But before we dig deeper into what Russia did to prompt such devastating retaliation, this is a quick reminder that you're watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, then now is the perfect time to hit that button. June 15th is a day that will live long in the memories of the residents of Kyiv for all of the wrong reasons. Russia chose that day to unleash a wave of strikes against Ukraine's capital, along with other regions of Ukraine. Only military targets weren't on Putin's agenda. Terrorizing Ukraine's civilians is all that Russia wanted to achieve, and it did just that. By the end of Russia's strike, at least 11 Ukrainians were dead. 4 in Kyiv, 5 rescue workers in Kharkiv, who were attempting to put out a fire, and at least 2 more elsewhere in Ukraine. Kyiv's mayor Vitaly Klitschko reported that Russia's strikes had left 140,000 of his city's people without electricity. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky later reported that Russia's 611 drones and 70 missiles had injured 53 people all across Ukraine. But as devastating as adding to a civilian casualty count that the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has verified to be at least 62,716 as of May 31st, Russia crossed another line that should never be crossed on June 15th. It hit a monastery. And not just any monastery, a UNESCO heritage site. The Guardian reports that the Dormition Cathedral, which is in Kyiv's Pechersk-Lavra monastery complex, was badly damaged as a result of Russia's missile and drone strikes. This is terrorism, a purposeful attempt by Putin to destroy one of the most significant religious and cultural sites in all of Ukraine. And just to rub salt into the wounds, Russia also went after the Alexander Dovzhenko National Film Studio, which is home to Ukraine's largest and oldest costume collection. Footage of the burning monastery was published by Euronews, and it shows the scale of the damage done to such an important Ukrainian monument. The blaze burns right at the heart of the cathedral, and we see fire crews attempting to douse the flames, but the damage has been done. June 15th was the day that Russia went after the very heart of Kyiv. What we're seeing here is a war in Ukraine's entire culture. Putin is trying to wipe out everything that makes Ukraine what it is, as he relentlessly tries to strip the nation of its sovereignty to force it into becoming part of Russia. In this tale of 2 strikes, we see the difference between Ukraine and Russia. Putin wants terror. He doesn't care what Russia's drones and missiles hit, as long as they hit something Ukrainian. In fact, it's even better for Putin if civilians die and churches burn. It's all about scaring Ukraine's people into submission. But Ukraine is all about precision. When it takes revenge, it doesn't do so by purposefully targeting Russian civilians. Ukraine takes out refineries, it destroys oil depots, it conducts strikes against Putin's war machine, rather than the people he has dragged into his ego-stroking invasion. Zelensky took to X to make that point in the wake of the attack on the Moscow Oil Refinery, as well as to point out how justified Ukraine is when it targets the heart of Russia. This is a fully justified response to Russian attacks on our cities and communities, and another important result of our warriors' work against facilities that sustain Russia's war machine, Zelensky declared before adding, "In recent days, all of our partners have noted the precision and effectiveness of our mid-range strikes and long-range sanctions. It's time the war ended, and Russia must take the necessary steps in diplomacy." Moscow has just felt the reach of Ukraine's drones, but it's the precision that matters here. While Russia is happy to hit anything it can, Ukraine whittles away at the war machine. Bit by burning bit, that machine is being ground to a halt. Another message has been sent. Revenge has been taken. But for Putin, the real problem in all of this is not only that Moscow is now a target, and that's a catastrophe in and of itself, but Ukraine's strike isn't a one-off. What just happened at the Moscow Oil Refinery is something that Ukraine can do over and over, and the FP-1 drones that were used on June 18th are the key. A lot has been said about Firepoint and its FP-5 or Flamingo drone missile hybrid, and it should be. The Flamingo is lethal. But when it comes to Ukraine's deep strike strategy, the FP-1 may be the most important drone that Ukraine has in its arsenal. The specs alone reveal why this drone is an ongoing and mounting concern for Russia. The FP-1 can travel for 1,600 kilometers, which not only puts Moscow in range but makes any military and energy facility that isn't in the far-flung regions of Russia a target. The 160-kilogram warhead this drone carries may not be the largest among Ukraine's deep strike assets, but that firepower is accompanied by precision due to a multimodal navigation system that pulls from SatNav, GPS, and even Russia's GLONASS system, while combining with an inertial navigation system. The FP-1 gets to where it needs to go, and it strikes its target far more often than not. But for Russia, the key concern is the cost. The drones that just set Moscow's biggest refinery ablaze cost Ukraine just $55,000 to build, the New Voice of Ukraine reports. And that low cost means that mass production is a reality. The Ukrainian defense tech community marketplace reveals that the FP-1 is being produced in large quantities, with up to 100 of the drones being built every single day. When we said that Putin can't assume that this latest refinery strike was a one-off, this is the reason why. Ukraine is building the drone that carried out this strike in such high numbers that it could theoretically hit Russia with an entire swarm every single day. And it's not just the swarms that have Putin peeing in his pants, it's the fact that Russia's most valuable and important city is now a target. We touched on this earlier, but we need to emphasize how important it is that Ukraine can now hit a refinery that is just 15 kilometers away from the Kremlin, seemingly at will. This is supposed to be the single most protected refinery in all of Russia, and it's located far too close to the most important building in Moscow for Putin's comfort. What June 16th and 18th show us is that for all of the bluster, Moscow's air defenses aren't doing enough to protect the city. In a June 17th report, CBS News offered a theory as to why, as it pointed out the sheer scale of Ukraine's drone strikes means that Russia is running low on S-300 missile interceptors. If that's the case, then Russia has to rely more heavily on systems like the S-400 and Pantsir, which are more modern, but will also soon start to see their missile stockpiles run low. That's likely what we saw in Moscow. Remember, The Guardian reported that Russia was sending machine gunners into towers to deal with Ukraine's drones, and that's not something that should be happening in Russia's capital city. Putin's new reality is that he can no longer shield the one city that he wanted to keep in a Ukraine war bubble. Moscow was supposed to remain untouched, but every time that Ukraine's drones hit their targets, Putin's protector image is damaged, and Russia's leader is humiliated. And worst of all for Putin is that he knows he can't do anything about it, and he has even confessed to his complete inability to protect his own country. That confession didn't come directly. Nothing out of Putin's mouth can be trusted, but Putin's actions reveal everything. Cast your mind back to May 9th. That was the date of Russia's pitiful Victory Day parade, which saw absolutely none of the military equipment rolling through the streets that is typical of this celebration. Why? Russia was scared that Ukraine's drones would fly into the parade and destroy that equipment for the entire world to see. The largest demonstration of Russia's military power became a complete non-event. That is Putin's confession. No tanks rolling through Red Square is Putin's way of telling Moscow's people that he can't protect them anymore. And if that wasn't enough to drive the message home, a burning oil refinery 15 kilometers away from the Kremlin makes the confession clearer than ever before. Moscow is now a target. The city's air defenses have been exposed, facilities critical to the war machine are being hit, and every single day, Ukraine is building dozens more of the drones that Russia has failed to stop. The pressure is mounting on Putin, as it should be. After all, this isn't the first strike against Moscow in recent memory. Just a month before, almost to the day, Ukraine unleashed a multi-day drone, missile, and glide bomb blitz against Moscow. This is a story of covert sabotage, failed defenses, and a hammered Russian war machine, and you can find out all about it by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to The Military Show as we track Ukraine's progress to becoming a deep strike behemoth, and thank you for watching.